For the past year, my life with my husband David had been a constant exercise in sacrifice. I, Emily, had been working 3 jobs, one as a graphic designer, another as a freelance writer, and a third as a part-time barista on weekends, just to make ends meet. David had been laid off from his job and was taking time to find himself, a phrase that had begun to sound more like a permanent vacation. We were living on my income and a small inheritance I had received from my late grandmother, a sum I had been fiercely guarding in a separate savings account, a last resort for emergencies. My days were a grueling cycle of late nights and early mornings. I ate instant noodles for dinner, wore clothes until they were threadbare, and spent my evenings meticulously tracking our budget on a spreadsheet, trying to stretch every dollar. David, on the other hand, was always home, always relaxing, always talking about his plans for the future. He would tell me not to worry, that everything would be okay, but his words felt hollow, especially when he was ordering expensive takeout or buying new video games. His father, Mr. George, was a constant presence, dropping by unannounced, always with an air of entitlement, and always with a subtle disdain for my common ways. One Tuesday morning, I came home from my barista shift, exhausted and smelling of coffee. The house was quiet, and I assumed David and his father were still asleep. I had to pay a few bills, so I went to my home office, a small, cramped room with a desk and a laptop. That's when I saw it. A bank statement lying on my desk, not from my account, but from a joint account I didn't even know existed. It had been left open on my laptop screen. My heart pounded in my chest as I clicked on the tab. The statement was from a bank I didn't recognize, and it was a joint account in the names of David and George. My hands trembled as I scrolled down, my eyes widening with every line. There were massive transactions I didn't recognize, a deposit of $15,000 from an inheritance I never knew about, and then a series of lavish withdrawals. My gut instinct told me something was terribly wrong. I scrolled to the most recent transaction, and the cold, hard truth hit me like a physical blow. It was a booking for a luxury vacation to Key West. The dates were for the following 2 weeks. The confirmation email was open in a separate tab, with all the details: first-class plane tickets, a lavish 5-star hotel with an oceanfront view, private boat rentals, and expensive dinners for two. The total cost was $15,000, the exact amount of the inheritance I had been so carefully guarding. My stomach churned as I reread the details: the date of the booking, the total cost, and the names of the travelers: David and George. Just then, I heard the sound of my husband and his father laughing from the living room. "I can't believe it, son," Mr. George's voice boomed. "A whole 2 weeks in Key West. The weather's going to be perfect, and it's all on her. She'll never even know a thing about it." David's laugh, a sound that I had once found so endearing, now sounded hollow and cruel. "Relax, Dad," he said. "It's just money. She's got plenty of it. She won't even notice it's gone. We deserve this trip. We've earned it." My blood ran cold. The inheritance wasn't from David's family. It was from my late grandmother. The money I had been so desperately saving, the money that was meant to be for our future, was being used by my husband and his father for a lavish vacation, and they had the audacity to laugh about it. I felt a surge of betrayal so sharp and visceral that it made me dizzy. My sanctuary was a lie, my marriage a sham, and my husband a fraud. The sound of their laughter echoed through the house, a cruel symphony of deceit. "It's just money," David had said, his voice so casual, so dismissive, as if the thousands of dollars I had been fighting to save were nothing more than pocket change. "She won't even notice it's gone." The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a fresh cut. I stood in the hallway, the crumpled bank statement in my hand, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The shock was a physical thing, a cold numbness that had taken over my body, leaving me hollowed out and filled with a cold, terrifying rage. I walked into the living room, the bank statement held out like a shield. My legs felt like lead, and my head was spinning. David and his father, Mr. George, were sitting on the couch, laughing, a half-empty bottle of expensive whiskey between them. The picture of entitled, lazy luxury. The sight of them, so comfortable and so callous, made my blood run cold. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, but it cut through their laughter like a knife. They looked up, their smiles vanishing in an instant. They saw the bank statement in my hand, and their faces fell into a mask of pure panic. Thomas was the first to recover, his face hardening into a look of feigned innocence. "Honey, what are you doing? Where did you get that?" "From my laptop," I said, my voice rising with every word. "I saw the bank statement. I saw the trip. I saw the money. My money. What is this, David? What is this Key West vacation all about?" Mr. George scoffed, his gaze full of a condescending superiority. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. It's just a little trip. My son and I deserve a vacation. We've been through a lot." I felt my blood run cold. They weren't sorry. They were defiant. "Deserve a vacation? You've been unemployed for a year, David. And you, Mr. George, you've been living off us for months. Where did you get the money? Who's paying for this?" David's eyes darted between me and his father, his face a mix of embarrassment and fury. "It was an inheritance, Emily. From Dad's side of the family, a secret fund for a rainy day. It was our money. We have a right to spend it." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Don't lie to me, David. I saw the deposit. It was the exact amount of my inheritance from my grandmother's account. I didn't know you had access to it. You told me it was a separate account, a last resort." Mr. George leaned forward, his voice a low, threatening growl. "It doesn't matter whose money it was. What matters is that my son needed a break. He's been stressed. We've been looking out for him. You should be happy for him. We've always been a family, and we have to stick together. You're just a part of it." His words were a dagger, a cold and cutting reminder of my place in their world. I was an outsider, a person with no voice, no rights, and no respect. I looked at David, and in his eyes I saw not a husband, but a stranger. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a source of income, a meal ticket he could use to pay for his lavish lifestyle. He had lied to me, stolen from me, and then had the audacity to tell me I should be grateful. A quiet, cold rage settled over me. There was no point in arguing with them. They were a unified front, a team of two, and they were utterly without shame or remorse. My tears had dried and my fear had vanished. It was time to stop being a victim and start being a lesson. They wanted a vacation, fine, but they were going to get a lesson they would never forget. A quiet, unsettling calm settled over me. The raw, painful emotion that had threatened to consume me was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I looked from David's panicked face to Mr. George's smug smirk. They were a team of two, convinced of their own righteousness, and I was just a problem to be dismissed. My hands, which had been trembling moments before, were now steady as I placed the bank statement on the coffee table between us. "You're right," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. "This is a family matter. But what you failed to realize is that you and I are a family of two, and you, Mr. George, are not a part of it." I turned my gaze back to David, whose face was now a mask of fear. "You took my money, David, the money my grandmother left for our future, and you used it to buy a vacation for you and your father. You lied to me, you deceived me, and you laughed about it. You had the audacity to call this an inheritance from your side of the family. The truth is, you've been living off me for a year, and you have no shame." Mr. George scoffed, his gaze full of a condescending superiority. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. It's just a little trip. My son and I deserve a break. We've been through a lot." I felt my blood run cold. They weren't sorry. They were defiant. "Deserve a vacation? You've been unemployed for a year, David. And you, Mr. George, you've been living off us for months. Where did you get the money? Who's paying for this?" David's eyes darted between me and his father, his face a mix of embarrassment and fury. "It was an inheritance, Emily, from Dad's side of the family, a secret fund for a rainy day. It was our money. We have a right to spend it." I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Don't lie to me, David. I saw the deposit. It was the exact amount of my inheritance from my grandmother's account. I didn't know you had access to it. You told me it was a separate account, a last resort." Mr. George leaned forward, his voice a low, threatening growl. "It doesn't matter whose money it was. What matters is that my son needed a break. He's been stressed. We've been looking out for him. You should be happy for him. We've always been a family, and we have to stick together. You're just a part of it." His words were a dagger, a cold and cutting reminder of my place in their world. I was an outsider, a person with no voice, no rights, and no respect. I looked at David, and in his eyes I saw not a husband, but a stranger. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a source of income, a meal ticket he could use to pay for his lavish lifestyle. He had lied to me, stolen from me, and then had the audacity to tell me I should be grateful. A quiet, cold rage settled over me. There was no point in arguing with them. They were a unified front, a team of two, and they were utterly without shame or remorse. My tears had dried and my fear had vanished. It was time to stop being a victim and start being a lesson. They wanted a vacation? Fine. But they were going to get a lesson they would never forget. The humid air of Key West was a distant memory. David and his father, Mr. George, stepped out of their cab, their faces a picture of smug satisfaction. The 2-week vacation had been everything they had hoped for. Fishing trips, private boat tours, and endless cocktails on the beach. They had lived a life of stolen luxury, a fact they found endlessly amusing. As they walked toward the front door, Mr. George clapped David on the shoulder. "I've got to hand it to you, son. That was a stroke of genius. She'll never even know a thing." David grinned, fumbling with his keys, his mind already drifting to the cold beer waiting for him inside. But the moment the door opened, a chilling silence greeted them. The house was unnervingly still. The familiar scent of my perfume, the clutter of my work on the dining table, the life that had been so central to the home, it was all gone. The kitchen was spotless, the living room furniture was bare, and the hallway, where my coats usually hung, was completely empty. They walked into the living room, their triumphant expressions slowly dissolving into confusion. "Emily?" David called out, his voice echoing in the hollow space. He walked into the bedroom and his heart sank. The closet doors were wide open, revealing empty hangers. My side of the bed was stripped bare, and my personal belongings, my books, my photos, my little jewelry box, were gone. "Where is she?" Mr. George asked, his voice laced with annoyance. "This isn't like her. Did she run off with someone?" David was too panicked to answer. He reached into his pocket for his wallet, his mind racing to a single, terrifying thought. The money! He pulled out his credit card and tried to swipe it on a mobile app on his phone, but it was immediately declined. He tried another card. Declined again. His face went pale. He pulled out his phone and tried to log into his bank account, the one they had just drained for their vacation. An error message appeared. Account frozen. Contact bank. Mr. George, seeing his son's panic, pulled out his own wallet. He tried to use his credit card, but it was also declined. He fumbled with his phone and found an email notification he hadn't seen before. The subject line read, "Police report filed. Charges pending." His hands trembled as he opened it, and his face drained of all color. "What is it, Dad?" David asked, his voice shaking.
Mr. George's eyes were wide with a terrified disbelief as he read the email aloud.
"A police report has been filed, charging David and George with grand larceny and fraud, stolen from her inheritance." He looked up at his son, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. "She knew! She knew about the money! She took it all! And she's gone to the police!" Their furious triumph crumbled into a chaotic blame game. "This is your fault!" Mr. George screamed, his face red with fury. "You were supposed to be careful. You were supposed to handle your wife. You let her find out." "My fault!" David shrieked, his voice laced with a bitter desperation. "You were the one who told me it was a brilliant idea. You were the one who said she'd never find out. You're a con artist, Dad. You've ruined my life." They were no longer the triumphant duo, the masters of their own destiny. They were two helpless, pathetic men screaming at each other in an empty house. The lavish vacation was just a brief, stolen fantasy. Their arrogance and greed had led them to this moment, a moment of utter and complete ruin. The empty house felt like a tomb, the silence a heavy blanket over their furious accusations. David and Mr. George stood in the middle of the living room, their shouts now just frantic whispers, their triumphant expressions replaced by a cold, numbing dread. The phone in David's hand was a dead weight, the screen showing the dreaded message. Account frozen. The luxurious vacation, the lavish dinners, the 2-week escape, it was all a fleeting dream, and they had just woken up to a living nightmare. Their panic turned to a desperate rage, a fury directed at each other. "This is your fault!" David screamed, his voice cracking with a mix of fear and betrayal. "You were the one who said it was a good idea. You were the one who said she'd never find out." Mr. George's face, once so smug, was now pale and contorted with anger. "Don't you dare blame me. You are my son, and you were the one who was supposed to handle your wife. You let her take everything from us. You've ruined my life." They were no longer a unified front, a family of two. Meta. Pause. Sex, 0.05. They were two pathetic men, screaming at each other in an empty house, their greed and arrogance having left them with nothing but the bitter taste of defeat. The lavish lifestyle, the illusion of wealth, the power they thought they had, it was all gone. The sound of my husband and his father screaming at each other was the last thing I heard as I walked out the door. The anger, the pain, the betrayal, it was all gone, replaced by a quiet sense of calm and a deep, fulfilling sense of justice. It wasn't about the money, it was about respect. It was about teaching them that I am not an ATM. I am not a person to be used, and my love and trust are not something to be taken for granted. I left everything behind: the house, the furniture, the memories. I moved into a new, smaller, but peaceful apartment. It's just a few blocks from my job, and I don't need a car anymore. I don't have 3 jobs anymore. I have my one job, my art, and my peace. My life is simpler, but it's mine. It's built on my own hard work, my own dignity, and my own rules. I later found out that the police took their case seriously. They were charged with fraud and grand larceny, and the family name, which they held so dear, was dragged through the mud. The money from my grandmother's inheritance, the money they had so callously stolen, was used as evidence against them. They lost everything: their money, their pride, and their reputation. They thought they could get away with it, but they learned the hard way that there is always a price to pay for your actions. As for my husband, he called me, begging me to come back, promising to change. But I just hung up. The man I married was gone, and in his place was a stranger, a thief, and a man who chose his father over his wife. I am no longer his wife, I am no longer a victim, and I am no longer afraid. My life is mine again, and I am free.